The Snapshots Music and Arts Foundation presents a conversation with Juilliard professor and noted author David Dubal on the history of the piano and state of classical music. Part 2.
I think the first thing that in our time that we have to worry about is changing this idea of classical music. That word is punishing to it. It's a bad word now. It's an elitist word. Elitism is the second worst word in the English language now, next to racism, of course. Mm-hmm. And when you pigeonhole the art of music, the music that is notated, which is very important, the music that can be interpreted through generations, and you pigeonhole this by saying it's classical, and then you call another vernacular type of art jazz or another thing another name. If you're going to do that, you're going to have to rank this now in an egalitarian nightmare that we live in. You have to rank classical music as without a doubt mankind's highest nonverbal expressions, and that is a very important part of gaining a little bit more in the society where we've been marginalized down to nothing. So until we establish in a society that says we don't even like the word discrimination anymore, we have to discriminate in the sense that this thing called classical music, serious music, art music, I don't know what we can come up with, but there should be some contest for that. To differentiate it from all of this vocal crap that you hear day and night. You cannot. I'm in the quiet car last night, and the guy is, he's still irritating me because even though you're not allowed to have cell phones or music, he's got the things on his ears, and it's coming through because he's blasting them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm constantly moving away because if anyone is sensitive to tone, and they're not anymore, you cannot sit in a restaurant, you can't talk, you can't be in public at all, you can't go into a store without this tremendous fascism of music, hounding you, and always with words so silly that, you want to vomit. Now, I'm not talking about the fact that, I'm some iconoclastic nut, I'm talking about someone who's sensitive to the world around him. And now we've made in this electronic world, and there's your key word, the moment the phonograph came into existence, that was the end of the piano, the home domestic system, so to speak. By 1915, you had 200,000 more phonographs being sold in pianos. That was unprecedented. Then it was over. The Depression brought in sports and all types of entertainment, all kinds of things like the automobile. Women were now working and smoking, and they weren't home practicing, so their libidos were now not taken care of by Chopin, but by a wide variety of things like Rudolph Valentino and on and on. There's no such thing as silence or aloneness or everyone has to click with everyone.
What do you feel happened in the post-World War II period of the last century that pushed classical music further away from its roots of romanticism and beauty?
It's a big question. I think that there was a great musicalization of America through pop music, through the invention of the LP in '48, where I think maybe I even said it to you once, that the record companies could have promoted this much better. School systems still had programs, without doubt, I remember them, and the impact of the mass media, by into the 50s, the Elvises, there was no longer the big band era where you had this sweet dance music, from the great ones of that era, Guy Lombardo or Glenn Miller or countless. They were in every hotel, they were everywhere, and they were, promoting a kind of nonviolent music. And as the century became more multicultural and more me, it was more and more violence. The Beatles looked like cute little kids from Liverpool now, That was taken up by the record company, and these kids had tremendous spendable income from their parents. The parents lost control of them. The 60s became out of control. There was no culture, no interest in it. There was the opening of the sex revolution. The free and easy aspects, which, at that moment it looked so good, but now in retrospect, there was nothing created at all. I mean, even in the world of music or band, Cage's music or the other, it's not going to ever be performed. It had no, the idea of equality had started there in Cage's very, very dangerous dictum that all sounds are equal. And it just means he had no ear, and he didn't, as Virgil Thompson told me. I had no idea about, what he was really hearing. It was just, a very interesting mind. And there were a lot of interesting minds that did a lot of things, but they didn't have any lasting power or tradition. Warhol was a product of his own publicity machine, and now he continues being, part of a publicity machine. The celebrity culture grew, and grew. You call Clark Gable a star, but now you call, some minor, every now a porno person is a porno star. Well, why would they have to be a star? And why?
Right.
And why wasn't Cary Grant a superstar? But every little actor is a superstar today. Mm-hmm. Why would you need a term like that if you weren't living in an age of nothingness? Why would Michael Jackson be considered an artist instead of an entertainer? Judy Garland would have been happy to have been called a great entertainer. That's what she was. She was not a great artist. She may have done her work with a certain artful quality, but that's not art. Popular music is not art. It can be very wonderful, and anything with words are always, an extra curricular activity to a specific kind of art. Even Schubert's songs, we cannot consider them on the level of his Ninth Symphony or string quartets or the sonatas of the last, They're wonderful depictions of poems. And as Hugo Wolf put it perfectly, the musician is a Dracula. He takes every single bit of the blood of the poem and uses it his own way. That's why a man like Goethe never wanted his music set. That's why he never, when Schubert wrote his songs and sent them to him, he never, got an acknowledgement. He was saying, I don't want my stuff perverted by music. So today we live in a world of pop culture which are words. We don't have that silence that instrumental music gives us. Opera is, of course, theater, and, all of this is wonderful, but it has nothing to do with art. Ravel talks about it best when he says, in one letter about his definition of art, which is Broadway musicals or whatever would not be art in his, it's commerce. Opera is also money. It was the only way a composer could ever make money. A city as superficial as Paris, a gossip city, didn't care about, string quartets and Beethoven. They cared about, the newest opera with Meyerbeer's ice skating, roller skating in one of his operas. There's really nothing much you can do if you've had, the Beethoven sonatas performed 10 million times a year. What's going to be, you can only be eccentric. There's a big piano literature out there and no one wants to play it because the public has been taught that there's only one thing, Beethoven. I love Beethoven, I admire him, and I consider him one of the greatest things that has ever happened to the human race. But he's not the only thing. But you can't produce anything of the Beethoven spiritual quality or Shakespeare or anything else today, Mozart or Horowitz on a lower level into the performance world. You're not going to ever have another Rembrandt. You can't even have anyone that draws. I hardly know a human being in a world that once had many people that knew how to draw. All musicians knew how to draw. All people knew how to draw. No one draws. No one sits. Because of the performing art of music, it has survived. But other than that, it would never have survived if the stuff wasn't written down. Many educated people don't even give their kids piano lessons. In the 1960s, you still had the holdover of every single suburban home had a piano, and certainly every home on Fifth Avenue or Park Avenue had Steinways. But the piano, beautiful piano, was one of the great creations in the world, and they better continue this. They have a tremendous responsibility to the pianists, and these pianists are very serious people. They are still, a great group of people that have aspiration and work ethic.
What did Steinway get right that other piano firms were not able to quite come up to the level of?
Yeah, they had a great tradition from the first Steinway. Henry, born in the year of Schubert, he came here in the year of the 1848 Revolution. He kept all of his family in it. Theodore Steinway was a piano and acoustic genius, and he developed all of the things. The double, later on the double mechanism, the double, way that the Steinway action works, the patent of that. I mean, you can't do good pianos unless you know what Steinway did. They knew how to do the wood for North America. They understood the climate, the overstringing. Everything about the Steinway comes from tremendous experimentation of the family. That's another example there of a family creating something together over a long period of time. No family in it now, no family left.
Okay, no family ownership.
Henry died 2 summers ago, I believe. Henry V. Steinway. But he was the first one to sell it to CBS, you see, when he thought it was going to, help the firm. But it didn't. Then they sold it to, some Boston people, finance. Then they sold it to some financiers in the West Coast, and then that didn't work. And, enough. Why do we have to think that this society is good? It is only interested in the bottom line. We didn't finish Glenn Gould, who is really the great revolutionary pianist of the 20th century. Oh, without doubt, he was, he's not the warmest. He's not the one who plays the romantic music, which is the piano repertoire's, importance. He plays Bach better than anyone in the sense that, when he gives you his music, it is what a 20th century performer must do, which is the combination of the composer and a great creative imagination on the performer with a technique that has no limitations.
Right.
There was nothing like Glenn Gould. He doesn't warm my heart. His personality is a great romantic personality, I want to be alone. He was mysterious. He had, all of the makings of, a great 19th century creature who, we still are able to produce a few. They're called eccentrics usually. Horowitz was not eccentric, and Gould was not eccentric. They were original creators who, tried to mold their environment around, their needs. Very hard.
Yes.
Very hard. Horowitz failed, and Gould failed in the sense that, he had to escape through drugs, and then finally he dies at 50, much too early. God. I told him on the phone, I said, get rid of the piano in your life. You've done enough with it. It's not going to give you back anything more. Do something great. Become a Dalai Lama, or do something interesting. Become the premier of Canada, or become a actor, because he loved acting and his many accents. But stop this piano. What are you going to do? Ken Goldberg? You could really talk to him like that. He laughed. He laughed. I said, at least play some more Scarlatti sonatas. And he said, that's just popcorn. But his output, wonderful, wonderful things. No one ever had quite a touch like this. You just know it's Glenn Gould. Once I said, Horowitz's technique in the day, he says, the only time he ever disparaged anyone was, what do you mean Horowitz's technique? My technique is much better. We were just talking on the phone after midnight. That's when he would call you. You didn't call him. And, my interview with him is the last interview he ever did, that was published in Reflections from the Keyboard. And, it's a great story also, but he really did, he just rewrote my questions, and answered 3, but they were totally, his own writing of my questions. And they were just great, the way he talks about. He was creating and did at all times a legend for himself. I didn't practice, I didn't this. Everything about him was, to create a great, mysterious entity. He did it.
He did.
Yeah, what pianist has written about or had documentaries every year or a magazine devoted to him or Gruviana or all of that. And by the way, so affable. The sound of his voice would linger in your ear for a long time. He was such an affable character because he was a great pusher of technology, but he was still editing in the old-fashioned way. He wouldn't have believed the new, if he liked it, well, then, even that was part of his character. I can't believe that a man would prefer really hearing records than to hear him. But he said, no, I can't do it. I can't play in public. I can't stand it. But, I think he was really right. He couldn't artistically abide the fact that the second time he would play it much better, and you can't do that second time in the concert. He said, I want to give them their dollar's worth, and I'm not being able to do that. I think there was a very honest, sincere, but inflexible man in there. And he told the whole world that, performing is obsolete. And, that went down, and that hit a lot of people. Remember, the unconscious, in a big idea like that, or a bomb or whatever, the unconscious takes over, and hundreds and hundreds of pianists in the next generation from the 70s, 80s, with Gould's influence, they all said, yeah, it's not really a great thing to play in public. It's records that count. He gave it up, remember, in around 65. He's only 32 years old. That means a whole generation were indoctrinated with this idea that, playing on stage is no good. He tarnished it tremendously with his love of technology. I wonder how he would have fared today with the cell phone every minute and people on Broadway bumping into you and the loudness and the this and the that and the computer all day long. Right. Would Glenn Gould, practice ever? He was an addictive guy. He'd go to the computer and he'd probably stay there as, is this the way life should be, the computer or the assembling of the iPods or whatever they're doing in China? Yeah. Is this life? This is as bad as the early days of the Industrial Revolution that you were describing. He wouldn't have survived today. He just barely did then, and he had to close himself to the world.
Right.
Yeah, and he did it. And he died in 82. That is dinosaur time for us now.
Maybe you might be able to confirm what Horowitz and the performers of his generation who were alive felt about the changes that had occurred over the 70s, 80s, 90s.
He felt alone. His generation was gone in every way, and I don't think he felt that there were any pianists that really could talk to him. They played for him, and he taught them. I gave them students myself. I brought them, when I thought it could work, and sometimes it worked. But these were not Horowitz's, Pariah was not Horowitz either, and he comes to him, at that same period that I was there, and, I think that that was a misjudgment for Pariah. He was not that kind of pianist. We always want to be what we're not, but, Horowitz gave him pieces and said, you learn there, but this was not good for his hands and anything else. The point is that, when they say it was the last romantic, yeah, we can look at it that way. He's still alive, the public, and all the young pianists in the world. That's the only pianist that was ever produced for them. There is no one really else than Horowitz, not Gould, not any other pianist not around. No one but Horowitz for the young.
As you've so eloquently spoken about the golden age of the piano and the romantic period in all of your books, you've ended up being a spokesperson for this circle of music.
Well, I'm proud to be then. Thank you, because it's really spiritually very necessary. I'm not saying that listening to Beethoven is going to make you a great man or a great person, but let me tell you, it certainly will make you more fully human, and it has nothing to do with a machine. It's sitting there and listening carefully, and my God, what a triumph that is.
Continue to Part 3.